Political corruption isn't the only reason you're likely paying way too much in your energy bills. The local paper you likely trust for news in your town could actually be involved too. Now, in order to understand this, we really need to talk about a former Alabama state commissioner by the name of Terry Dunn, okay? A Tea Party Republican, but in this case, in this story, actually a pretty good guy. Because he noticed, just looking at the amount of money people in Alabama were paying on their energy bills, especially compared to what the rest of the country was paying for their energy bills, Alabamans were paying way too much.
Anna, this is a story where we could have had a great optimistic result where the right wing and the left wing get together because somebody in the right wing was doing the right thing.
Right,
and give him a ton of credit. We might disagree on everything else, but on this, he was 100% right. So let's find out what the system did to this guy who was a good Samaritan and trying to do good in the world.
So in 2010, Terry Dunn wanted to do something about how Alabamans were being price gouged by the utility companies, why they were paying too much money for their energy bills. And so he decided, look, I obviously need some political power. So he ran for a seat on the state commission that sets energy prices. And what he promised through his election and through his campaigning was to have a formal rate hearing with Alabama power executives. And he would basically force them to disclose their financial books under oath. Now, he got elected because obviously that's a very popular message that resonates with people living in Alabama. But after he won his seat, he was immediately approached by a lobbyist for the energy company. And the lobbyist's like, yo, bro, you're gonna have a nice fruitful career if you play ball.
Yeah.
And guess what? He wasn't willing to play ball. He went forward. And he continued doing what he wanted to do. He wanted to, hold this hearing. He wanted to figure out like why are the prices so much higher. And as soon as it was abundantly clear he was unwilling to play ball, that's when the smear merchants came in. And in this case, it was the local papers. But little did he know that the local papers were essentially bought by the utility companies.
Guys, this story is so telling in several different ways, and it's so damning of both politics and media in this country. But basically, what the power company did after he won the election is they pulled a Pablo Escobar on him. They're like silver or lead. You're gonna get one or the other. You're either gonna get a lot of money and your seat's gonna be safe forever, and congratulations, you're now part of the elite and the powerful and you have status for as long as the eye can see. Or we're gonna eliminate you. And so this guy, who's a right-winger, decided to be honest, and they set out to eliminate him. This is the CSI anatomy of how that happened.
Yes, so NPR actually investigated the papers that were smearing him, and they found out, there's actually a lot of corruption going on here. So let me give you the details. As NPR writes, for some, Dunn is a populist hero. For others, he's a radical environmentalist, wrote one of the papers. It was a local paper in June of 2014. Alabama political reporter's editor-in-chief, Bill Britt, wrote this, right? He saw Dunn as manipulated by those who find companies like Alabama Power a convenient political target. Now, in 2014, Dunn ended up losing his re-election bid because these papers started painting him as a Democrat. But he was a Tea Party Republican, and in a state as right-wing as Alabama, that's the smear of all smears, believe it or not, right? Like, oh my God, he might be a Democrat. 2014, he loses his re-election bid. And so it turns out that some of the local papers there, again, were corrupted. Yellowhammer News, an Alabama political reporter, offer clashing ideologies, writes NPR. One hardline conservative, the other centrist, and appear simply to be competitors. Owners of the two sites separately defend their coverage, saying they are independent news outlets. But evidence would have you believe otherwise, okay? So in reality, they are among 6 news outlets across Alabama and Florida with financial connections to the consulting firm Matrix LLC. The firm, based in Montgomery, Alabama, has boasted clients including Alabama Power and another major US utility, Florida Power and Light. In addition to Yellowhammer and the Alabama Political Reporter, the sites include Alabama Today, the Capitalist, Florida Politics, and the now defunct Sunshine State News. Okay, so this political consulting group is employed by the utility companies, and essentially they control these particular papers, which put out these stories as if they're unbiased, straight news reports, when in reality, it's nothing more than propaganda on behalf of the utility companies.
That's partly because local news is gutted, so that creates two situations for them to exploit. One is people need local news, so they do fake local news in order to do propaganda on behalf of corporations. And number two is there's no local news to check them. And they go, wait a minute, these guys aren't real reporters, or this is not a real story. So since there's nobody guarding the hen house, they go nuts.
That's exactly right, that's exactly right. So I'm gonna give you some examples. So what did they do exactly? In Alabama and Florida, so these are the two states where NPR noticed this going on. Matrix sought to ensure much coverage was secretly driven by the priorities of its clients. Payments flowed as the utilities in Florida and Alabama fought efforts to incorporate more clean energy in electric grids, a fight they are still waging. And there's a lot of influence here, right? Because there are, again, 6 outlets collectively. They've received a lot of money, nearly $1 million, $900,000 from Matrix, its clients and associated entities between 2013 and 2020. So this is a pay to play situation. They're literally paying for these articles to appear in these papers that are mostly controlled by Matrix LLC to begin with. Now, a tally of the 5 still functioning sites show they have a collective audience of 1.3 million unique monthly visitors, so that's where the influence is. They have an impact on what people are thinking about clean energy, about these utility companies. And again, it would be one thing if these papers were upfront and honest about their funding, but they're not. They pretty much shield the audience or the readers from knowing about what's really motivating the type of articles they're printing.
Okay, so first credit to NPR, great story, and always credit where credit is due. Now, discredit to the rest of the national media, because this is a particularly egregious case. You see it, they're funding the local stories. They target the guy on purpose because he's actually trying to fight for consumers, for average citizens of Alabama. And look at us, a left-wing show, giving credit to this right-winger Tea Party guy who was trying to do the right thing. Now, at the national level though, you don't think giant corporations do this with national media?
They do.
They do almost the same exact thing.
Almost, it's not as brazen. They do it through advertising.
Yeah, but I'll give you a brazen case of it that gives you a sense of how it works. Archer Daniels Midland is a giant agriculture company that actually does not sell anything to the public. But for years, they advertised on all the Sunday shows, Meet the Press, My Favorite, McLaughlin Group, This Week, and Face the Nation. So covered all the networks. Why were they giving millions of dollars to the networks? To not talk about them. So when it was farm subsidies, they had a price fixing controversy, antitrust issues, all these things that normally would have been brought up on those Sunday shows were never brought up because Archer and Daniels Midland bribed, advertised with them a product that no one actually buys in the audience.
Right.
Okay, that's how this scam has been running for decades in America. It's just at the higher levels, they do it in a more sophisticated way.
And look, I love that NPR did this piece. It's an important piece. They did an excellent job with it. But at the same time, when you think about the business model for NPR, part of their funding is public, yes, but a lot of their funding is through donations. And a lot of their donors are very, very, very wealthy individuals. You get what I'm saying? And I'm sure that has an impact as well. So that money influencing reporting is a giant issue. Some cases are more egregious than others. What we're talking about here with the influence that utility companies have on print local journalism is some of the most egregious, one of the most egregious examples we can give you. And I want to give you a specific story because out of those 6 papers, only 5 of them exist right now. One of them is now defunct. And you're gonna know why in just a moment. So Sunshine State News emerged when Senator Rick Scott, a consistent ally of Florida Power and Light, was governor of Florida and maintained warm ties with him. So Matrix records show the firm paid the site at least $180,000. It shuttered a year after he won election to the US Senate. A former Scott aide also founded The Capitalist based in Tallahassee.
So the whole point of that paper was to do propaganda on behalf of Rick Scott.
Exactly.
And by the way, they then take that to right-wing media and pretend that it's real, and then right-wing media picks it up. Oh, Rick Scott, what an American hero. But in reality, they all know the whole point is to rip you off, to get these scummy politicians propaganda, and most importantly, whether they're an outsider on the right wing or an outsider in the left wing, if they're actually trying to fight for the average American, you're gonna be eliminated. And you've seen the press attack people like Nina Turner and Bernie Sanders trying to help you. Now you see them attacking right-wingers that are trying to help you.
Exactly.